السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وشجرة تخرج من طور سيناء تنبت بالدهن وصبغ للآكلين وإن لكم في الأنعام لعبرة نسقيكم مما في بطونها ولكم فيها منافع كثيرة نسقيكم مما في بطونها ولكم فيها منافع كثيرة وعليها وعلى الفلك تحملون. ولقد أرسلنا نوحا إلى قومه فقال يا قوم اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله غيره أفلا تتقون. فقال الملأ الذين كفروا من قومه ما هذا إلا بشر مثلكم يريد أن يتفضل عليكم ولو شاء الله لأنزل ملائكة ما سمعنا بهذا في آبائنا الأولين إن هو إلا رجل به جنة فتربصوا به حتى حين. صدق الله العظيم. In the last session that we were talking about this surah or these ayahs of Surah Al-Muminoon, we talked about ayah number 18 where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the benefit of water and how we benefit from this water, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the beginning of the creation sent all the water that was needed for this world. Is not that He sent certain amount at the beginning of the creation and the rest of the amount He keeps on sending occasionally from other sources. No, He filled the water in this world as much as people would need, and even in fact more than what people would need. One of the benefits of water that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned here is فَأَنْشَأْنَا لَكُمْ بِهِ جَنَّاتٍ. We brought out a lot of gardens of grapes and palm trees through that water. And not only this, لَكُمْ فِيهَا فَوَاكِهُ كَثِيرًا. In addition to this, you have a lot of other fruits that grows from the very same water. And we talked about these ayahs at that time, لَكُمْ فِيهَا فَوَاكِهُ كَثِيرًا, that there are a lot of fruits for us from this water, and all the fruit basically grows from the very same water. And it is an amazing thing that we see with the growth of all of these trees, that some of them are very sweet, some of them are sour, some are half and half mixed, some of them are very hot like hot peppers, some of them are bitter, and they all grow from the very same water. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rahmah and His ni'mah and His blessing, that the same water is being used, but the outcome is all different. There are a lot of lessons in it for us, but this is looking at it generally, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just mentioning the signs of His existence and His greatness, that things that we use on our daily basis, every day we use these things and we never realize what a great ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala it is. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if you look at the benefit of this water, you would also realize that there is a tree that grows from the same water, and that is very amazing tree. وَشَجَرَةً تَخْرُجُ مِنْ طُورِ سَيْنَاءَ. And there is a tree that grows from the mountain of Sinai. Tur Sinai is the area of Palestine, Baytul Maqdis. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala referred this tree to that place because that is the main place where this tree grows. That area and the areas around it. أَرْضَ الَّتِي بَارَكْنَا حَوْلَهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Quran says, that is the land that we blessed, and we blessed not only the land, we even blessed the areas around it. And we see that this tree grows in Palestine and the areas around it, Jordan, Syria, and those places also, they have a lot of growth of this tree. In another ayahs of Al-Quran Al-Kareem, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also described the importance of this tree, and that is the olive tree. When we look at the watermelon, we see that it's a fruit that's full of water. You keep on chewing it, and as you chew it, it keeps on disappearing. At the end, if you really, with the watermelon, if you try to take all the juice and throw out the rest of it, there is nothing. You keep on chewing and it turns into water. And it becomes very sweet water. It all grows from the same water. Although it is very amazing how this water gets all of that sweetness, how it takes that form and is not getting freezed. It's just changing the form. Nowadays we are coming up with different types of gels and these type of things, and we put chemicals into it so that it would dry and it will look like solid, but it really, once you start squeezing it, it becomes water again. But here we see in the watermelon the similar situation, that it looks like solid, you keep on chewing it, and it turns into water. And very sweet and tasty water. As surprising as this could be, but it's still understandable, you're getting water in it. But the amazing part is when you look at the olive. Because over there you don't have water, you are getting oil. This water is turning into oil. How the chemicals of it are changing, subhanallah, that this water is becoming oil. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, شَجَرَةً تَخْرُجُ مِنْ طُورِ سَيْنَاءَ. From the same water, a tree grows from the mountain of Sinai. تَنْبُتُ بِالدُّهْنِ. It produces oil. وَصِبْغٍ لِلْآكِلِينَ. And dressing for those who eat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this tree brings oil and brings the food at the same time that you can eat with bread. Sibgh means, sabagha yazbughu in Arabic means to paint something. Painting is sabgh. And dressing is a nice word for it. We have in English that when you have some food and you dress it with, on top of it, you dress it with something nice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this is how this oil comes, that oil is amazing. The olive oil is a very amazing oil that you can use it for almost anything. We use it for eating, you can use it for cooking, and you can use it for massaging, for your body, for your head. So it serves as a food, and it serves as an ointment, as a cure, as a medicine, and at the same time it's an oil that has no harms behind it. There are no side effects of it. It only has benefit. This is an oil that has only benefit, no harms in it. Of course, it does not mean that we overeat and then say there are no harms. That is not the harm of the oil, that is the harm of overeating. So, it is, and then in the old days they used to use it for, in the light also, for putting on the light, they would, for the candles, they would use the olive oil for it, and it was considered to be one of the best oils. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He gave the example of His nur in Quran, He gave it with the same olive oil, that if there is a candle that has olive oil and still is not on yet, and the olive oil, if it is pure and very clean and pure, then even if the fire is away from it, this oil is almost pulling the fire towards it to catch the fire, and it would like to burn and bring light up. Just like we see with the gasoline nowadays, that even if it is away, you don't have to take the match all the way to it. Even if you're away from it, it's gonna pull the fire and it will lighten up. So same thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the olive oil, that it has the same quality. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if you look at it, that this is the same thing, grows from the same water. You have very tasty and sweet dates that are coming from the same water, and next to that date palm tree you have another tree that is olive tree, and it's producing all of this oil that has totally different benefits than the palm tree. So subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding us of what we get from this water and how everything is being grown, and the water being the source for all of these things. وَإِنَّ لَكُمْ فِي الْأَنْعَامِ لَعِبْرَةً. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, just as you have a lot of lessons about the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the existence of Allah and His qudra, His strength, His power, our creation, same thing, وَإِنَّ لَكُمْ فِي الْأَنْعَامِ لَعِبْرَةً. You have lessons in the cattle for you. وَإِنَّ لَكُمْ فِي الْأَنْعَامِ. These cattle have a lot of lessons for you. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions few lessons of those that are in the cattle. Now, if you look at it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is really mentioning things that were in normal use, on those people's day-to-day use. That water is up to now, everyone uses it. But the way we use the water is totally different than people in the old days use the water. The reason is, we don't see the water when we don't use it. For them, there is a well over there. And everyone, their whole life is spent around that well of water. And that's everything for them. For us, we took it for granted that water has to come to me. It will come to my home. For them, they used to go and live where the water would be. If there is water somewhere, right away that area will develop and you will see a lot of people living around it. And it would become a village or it will become a town. But if there is no water, if they run out of water, even if it was an established town, if they run out of water, they all will move out of there. So this is something that they always used to see. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the lessons that we can learn from that water, because they see it all the time. Same thing, what they do over there, normally people used to have their cattle, goats, cows, camels. So this is what they normally used to have. And regardless of the person's business, in all days, regardless of the person's business, he would have some of these. That was a necessity in those days. You got to have a goat. Where are you going to get the milk from? You need the milk every day. And that was something that they normally would survive on. So this was something that, just like we have fridge in our homes, every person who has a fridge, regardless of the person's situation, it could be very poor, a person who deserves sadaqat and everything, still he will have a fridge. Same thing in those days, a goat has to be there. That would preserve all the food for them, their milk. Really, it was just like you can say that our fridge for them. Because in our fridge we keep the food that we like to save for the next day or for days to come. That was how they used to save for their future, that, okay, if I need food at any time, my children would ask for it any time. There is no other way of preserving it in the house. So here there is a goat out there, or there is a cow, or there is a camel, and we will milk it right away. At least we have something. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used these very simple example of things that they used to use on their daily life. And every day they're dealing with it. For us, these ayahs are telling us that whatever you have on your daily basis, things that you use on daily basis, use those things to remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the bottom line. That use the things that you normally use, things that you have on your daily basis in your use. Use these things to remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In reality, everything in this existence really reminds us of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything in this world tells us that, oh human being, by looking at me, by using me, you should remember your Rabb subhanahu wa ta'ala. Day and night we are using things. For example, one of the things that normally we all use, cars, means of transportation. This is something that we normally, every person uses. And if we look into that, really that thing by itself has a lot of reminders of the ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, just remember the ayah, Subhanalladhi sakhara lana hada. We glorify Allah who put to use these things for us. Sakhara lana hada. What does sakhara means? Who would, things that are being put to use for us, things that have been put under our control. Both of these meanings are of taskhir. Something that you have control over it but you cannot use it, this is not taskhir. You don't have it in your control. And something that you have in your control, something you can use but is out of your control, runs away. I mean, there is no use. We can't make good use of it. And you can benefit from it. Sakhara lana hada means both. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we look at some of the rides that they used to have in those days. For example, camel. If the camel gets violent, how many people are needed to control it? And it's almost impossible until you injure it, you kill it, or do something like that. Otherwise, it can eat the person up. There are incidents in the hadith where a camel got upset with its owner and chewed the head of its owner. Yes, it has that strength that if it would take the head into its mouth, it's going to chew it down. This is the strength of it. But, sakhara lana hada. Allah gave us control over it. You see a small child, 7, 8 years old, he's holding the rope and he's leading the camel. He's riding on top of the camel and camel is under control. He takes the camel wherever he wants. But if really that camel becomes violent, the whole family won't be able to control it and may injure or kill the whole family. This is taskhir from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who put these things to use for us and who made these strong things to be under our control. Same thing with our rights today. If we start analyzing what is being used in these things to make a car, how many things are being used? Subhanallah. You know, we don't realize the whole weight of this car that me and you, we cannot carry. The car's weight and your weight, my weight, every weight that we put in it is being carried on what? On air. on our cars. Our cars are just sitting on air. We call it tire. The tire are filled with air. And this air is just carrying all the weight. Look at that small amount of air, how much power does it have? Then the rubber, then the plastic, then the metal. And if we start looking at all of these things, really, there are two ways of looking at it. One is, if it was up to individuals that you make your own car, how long would it take for us to make that? And how nicely we would be able to make these cars for ourselves so that they will fulfill our need. It's almost impossible. سَخَّرَ لَنَا هَذَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put these things to use for us, that there are other people who work on it, and then we give them some money and get the car. Now it became easy for us. If it was on me to make it, I may not be able to make even one glass throughout my life. It needs a lot of glass. All around it is glass. And I may not be able to make even one of it. سَخَّرَ لَنَا هَذَا. Allah put all of this to use for me. You know, this glass, this plastic, this rubber, this air, this metal, all of these things are being put to use for my need. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put all of these things to use. And we know in ourselves that we feel that I'm driving it, I can do this. Even today we see when car gets out of control, what happens? When the car is out of control, it takes so many lives. Subhanalladhi sakhara lana hada. Glory to Allah who put this under our control. As soon as it would get out of control, if this metal will get out of our control and few screws are loose where the steering doesn't turn anymore, the person is gone. Where the brakes don't work anymore, that's it. Subhanalladhi sakhara lana hada. All of these things are being put to use. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us control over these things so that we can make the right use of it. So it is all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So each and everything really reminds us of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is nothing in this world that would not take us back to Allah and remind us of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the scholars of the Tabi'in was passing by a person who was killed, and then they put his body, they hanged the body on a cross. And that was for the purpose of showing people the lesson that, look, when this person does these crimes, then we killed him and this is what we did to him. And just to make him a lesson for the rest of the people so no one else would do something like this, they hanged the body on the cross. So this is a scholar who's going there with some of his students. And when he saw the body, he stood over there and started weeping. So the students asked him, what makes you cry here? Here, this is a criminal who was killed because of his crime, and he deserved it. You're standing here and crying now? So he said, the reason that I'm crying at this time by looking at him is, looking at this body is telling me, this person is really, I can hear that this person telling me that I gave my life for these crimes, and I did not stop even until when they killed me. So if you are following the haqq, you can't give your life for that. If I can give my life for the bad things, of course, then you should be ready to take anything for the haqq that you're standing for. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahmatullahi alayhi. We know what hardships he went through and how he was tortured in the prison. And he spent some years in that situation. In fact, the histories say that when they used to lash him, it was such that if the person who was one of the people who was assigned for lashing him, he said that we used to hit him in such a way that if we would hit an elephant with that, the elephant won't be able to take it. And Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, he's just laying down, he's taking it, and all he's saying is, "Ituni bi shay'in min kitabillahi wa sunnati rasuli hatta aqula bih." Bring me a proof from Quran and Hadith for me to say whatever you want me to say, otherwise this thing is not going to make me change. When he came out of the prison, then of course he was very weak and he always needed someone to help him and be with him, hold his hand, because he became very weak. They punished him a lot. They tortured him a lot in the prison. So his son says that every day as he is walking to masjid with me, I used to hear him making dua for a person, and I didn't know the person. So one day I asked him, "Dad, every day you make dua for this person. After adhan, I hear you making dua for this person. Who is this person?" And his son says, "I thought he may be some very special, great man, very virtuous person." So when I asked him, I was very surprised to hear from my father that he says, "This was a criminal in the prison with me. When I was put into the prison, this person approached me and he said to me, 'Ahmad, I'm in the prison here, and this is the 4th or 5th time that I came in here.' He was a robber. He says, 'I rob people, and every time I get caught, I end up being here. They cut my hand also, and still I did it when I left.' So he said to me that if I can do all of this for just robbing people and satisfying myself, you are here for haqq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose you to support His deen. Make sure you don't give up for anything else. If I can take all of this for these things that I know they are wrong, then you know you are right and you know you are on haqq, then you should never give up on this haqq because Allah has chosen you for this." Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahmatullahi alayhi says that was the person who really gave me the strength on standing firmly on this and not changing the opinion at all, not saying anything just to satisfy them. He gave me a lot of strength. And here I would say one thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rahmah, His karam is amazing. You never know when and how He is going to use who for His deen. Just imagine, this criminal, he may have someday done something good in his life, got dua from someone in his life, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the opportunity of being with Imam Ahmad and then give him that advice, and through that advice Imam Ahmad felt strength and he felt very strong that I should stand for the haqq. That person for sure must have got the benefit of advising Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi alayhi, and then Imam Ahmad for the rest of his life making dua for that person. Of course there is benefit for that also, dua from a person like Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahimahullah. So never know what time Allah will use who and how He uses people. We should never look down at others. Never look down at people. We never know how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would just use someone. And then, that's it. If Allah would use someone, then this person, he starts building up his balances of the akhirah in amazing ways that we cannot even imagine. So, the point is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put everything to use for us, and He gave us control over things that in normal situation we would never have control over these things. In normal situations we will not be able to make this right use of these things. Glass, we have so much use of this glass in our life, on the cars, on our buildings, and now even on our bodies. Glasses. It's good that I have a lot of, mashallah, people that with good eyes, but generally you find majority of the people wearing glasses. So we have so much use of it. And if really look at the glass itself, we have to say, Subhanalladhi sakhara lana hada. We glorify Allah who put this to use for us. Otherwise, I would not be able to make this use for it from this glass. Allah made people to work on it. They work on it and they make all of these things ready for us, and we just take it and we use it. With all of this metal. For us, some of us, if we have to put a nail in a wall, we may end up hammering our own fingers. We don't even know how to put the nails properly. But mashallah, we are using buildings with so much nails, so much material, so much metal in it. We are using our cars on daily basis with so much metal in it. So all of this is taskhir from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So point is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have used two examples in this ayah. One is water, the other is kettles. Those were the things of their daily use in those days. We need to look at things that are of our daily use nowadays and take the lessons from these things on our day-to-day life. This is the lesson that we are learning from this ayah. وَإِنَّ لَكُمْ فِي الْأَنْعَامِ الْعِبْرَةِ. Anyway, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us another example from the same kettles now. He says you have lessons from the kettle. We talked about general lesson that we take from the kettle and why kettles are used. Now, a specific example. نُسْقِيكُم مِّمَّا فِي بُطُونِهَا. We give you a drink from that which is in their stomach. Whatever they have in their stomach, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, from that, we are providing a drink for you. In another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مِن بَيْنِ فَرْثٍ وَدَمٍ لَبَنًا خَالِصًا. We are bringing out pure milk from between the dirt and the blood. It's all najasa. Inside the stomach is all najasa. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, from the very same stomach, I'm providing you with this pure milk. Subhanallah, this production of the milk is such an amazing thing. This thing by itself should be an enough lesson for people to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and know the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That these big animals like cows, they are not eating meat. They're eating grass. With such huge body, it's only eating grass. And from this grass, it produces this pure milk. And this grass, as it's being chewed, you see how dirty that is. It was never washed. The grass is dirty. It eats it in a very dirty way. And now, as it goes into the stomach, it's full of dirt. There is blood over there. There is all kind of dirt over there. But subhanallah, when we milk the cow, you see the color of the milk. You see how pure and clean this milk is. And everything else was najas, but here, this is very pure and clean. And not only clean, fihi shifa. There is shifa in it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put a lot of cure and a lot of needs are being fulfilled through this milk. Hardly there will be a nation in the world who does not use milk. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have made these machines usable, very easy, accessible, and the food that we have to give them is not that you have to go and look for very special type of food that normally is not available. Generally, whatever they eat, the grass they're eating, and still they're producing milk. This is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ibrah. This is a lesson. This is a great lesson for the world, for the people, for the human beings to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to see the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we have, today, if we would get a machine where if you put some meat in it and it will bring out some milk or it will bring out some vitamins, right away the question would be, who made this machine? What company makes this machine? Who invented the machine? how did they make this machine? It's very amazing. When it comes to these machines, right away we start looking at the manufacturer or who made it, which country it was made in. But these are the machines that are available everywhere. Goats, camels, cows. And we are using them all the time, but no one is asking who made this machine. Who made this machine that is producing all of this for us? A lot of us may have our favorite car, that I like to drive this car. I only drive this car from this company because we are very impressed by how this company makes their car. See, after using a car, right away we wanted to know who made this machine, who made this car. These are the manufacturers. If we start doing the same thing when we look at the world, that we look at these things, that we look at the goat and we say, subhanallah, with all of this production, so much milk that I'm having, who made this machine that produces all of this milk? And right away the answer is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We see the whole world, the system of the whole world going so smoothly. The question should come into our mind, who made this? Tabarakallahu ahsanul khaliqeen. Glory to Allah, who's the best of the creators. And He is the one who made all of these things. Subhanallah, we are using everything from what Rabbul Alameen subhanahu wa ta'ala have created, and we never thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for these ni'mas. We never even talk about the one who made these machines. There are so many companies that are making beautiful machines, nice machines. But still, when we find out that that company made this machine, the company really doesn't make a machine. This company doesn't make any car. There are people working over there who made these machinery. After all, behind everything you would find that there are people who worked. They made these machines, they invented these machines, the people, they used their brain, and now the question will be, who made that machine, who was able to produce this machine? Who created these human beings with such intellectual, with so much understanding, with so much abilities, and who created this material with so much abilities in it to be used for all of these things? Everything goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the first lesson that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us in Quran. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praise. We always say this. All praise. We don't just say praise. All praise. This is the right translation of Alhamdu. All praise belongs to Allah. Which means even if I admire you, that mashallah, this brother is very nice. Still these praise, although they sound like praising you, but it goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you. Regardless of what we admire in this world, finally those praise are going back to Rabbul Alameen subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He's the creator of all of these things and He's behind all of these things. So this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding us. نُسْقِيكُم مِمَّا فِي بُطُونِهَا. He says, see how we are providing you with pure drink from the stomach of these animals. And not only this, وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَنَافِعُ كَثِيرَةٌ. Miraculous word. وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَنَافِعُ كَثِيرَةٌ. In these animals, you have a lot of benefits. In these animals, you have a lot of benefits. Now, amazing. You just take a goat. From the beginning of the creation up to this day, we would realize that there are so many uses of this goat. Generally, you look at it, okay, it's an animal. You ask a child, what can you do with the goat? Okay, you can get milk from it. And if you slaughter it, then you eat the meat of it. And you can get use the skin of it. Use the hair of it for making some brush and things like this. But these are things that even a child could recognize and understand. But the amazing part is, up to this day, there is development in the use of these things. And these things are being used in so many things. Production from animals, things, different ingredients of the animal, from bones, from the skin, from the fat, from the meat. They are being used in so many things that nowadays it became difficult for us to find things that do not have these ingredients from animals. You would see that, subhanallah, I mean, from things that you could never imagine. They're driving ingredients and taking out things that could have great benefit. وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَنَافِعُ كَثِيرًا. And with all the advancement the world have gone through up to this day, today, if you challenge all the scientists and people that are working in this field of finding out the benefits only from animals, and challenge them, if they have got all the benefits of just one animal, tell them, just pick up one animal, you choose it, and tell us that now we have found out all the benefits of this animal. There is nothing that people would find in future more benefits from this animal anymore. And that's not possible. No one can accept it. No one can claim that if you bring me a small bird, I can tell you every benefit of it, and whatever benefits I would write down today, in future people will not be able to find more benefits from this animal, from this bird. وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَنَافِعُ كَثِيرًا. You have a lot of benefits in them. And we may think that is only because the science have advanced and we have technology and we have worked so much in it and now we are driving these things. No. I remember once reading, and I'm just using this as an example. There are a lot of examples that we find in the past, how they used to use these animals and how they brought up different uses. During the time of Abbasiyin, Khilafah Abbasiyah, a person came up to the physicians with a disease that had no treatment. I mean, doctors could not find any treatment for it. And he started going to different doctors. Finally, he goes to the ruler, Wallahu alam, who was the king at that time. He approached him. And kings used to have, normally in Baghdad, they used to keep the big physicians of that time, very intelligent ones, they used to keep them there. So the person went to him, and because it was a new disease, so he also took a lot of interest in it, and he introduced this person to the physicians, to the doctors of that time, and asked them to find some medicine and some cure for him. So after trying different things, one of the doctors prescribed the meat of a bird from a specific area. He says, go and take the bird from that area and use the meat of it. And then he told him a special way of using it, of preparing it and using it as a medicine. So after this person used it for some time, he was cured. Now everyone was surprised that how did this happen? From that doctor invented a totally new, different type of medicine. He invented a new type of medicine, and I will tell you what was that in a minute. But first thing, let's find out, how did he think of that? He told this person, see, there was a similar disease that existed in those days, and they used to use a tree. The abstract from one of the trees, they used to use it for cure of those diseases. When they used the abstract from that tree for this person, it did not work. In fact, it has a very major side effect, and it was harming him very badly. So now this doctor prescribed the bird from that area. When he was asked, he said, because I thought the abstract that comes of this tree is very strong for this man. And if we would dissolve it in water, it would lose the benefit of it also, and some of the chemicals will change. So what I wanted was, I wanted to give him a bird that have eaten that keeps on eating from that tree. So the meat of that bird is developed from the fruit of that tree, so that it has the effect and at the same time is not very strong. And from that they developed this another type of medicine in those days, and that was that you keep some small animals and make them eat some of the very strong things that are out there in the plants, and that will change and look at how changes come into the chemicals of this bird. Now this bird will be used for different type of diseases depending on how much they fed him of what. So they feed him from one tree, then they feed him from another tree, and they mix up the abstract from two different trees and feeding another third type of bird and now or animal, and then they use these birds, the meat of these birds, as a medicine, and they found out that really it's helping them in coming up with new type of medicines. وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَنَافِعُ كَثِيرًا. As I said, miraculous word, that you have a lot of benefits in these animals for you. A lot of benefits. Countless benefits just from these animals. And as I said, ingredients of it, subhanallah, I mean, if we start looking at the ingredients, there are so many different uses of it that we don't even realize that we are making so much use of these animals. وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَنَافِعُ كَثِيرًا وَمِنْهَا تَأْكُلُونَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, from the very same animals you eat. You have all of these other benefits where, when, as they used to use the oils and they used to use it for, still up to this day, when the ingredients from animals are being used in building a lot of materials like glues or things like this. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِنْهَا تَأْكُلُونَ. And this is the very same thing that you can eat also. You can eat it and you have benefit of eating it, and you can use it for other things and still have a lot of benefits out of it. وَمِنْهَا تَأْكُلُونَ وَعَلَيْهَا وَعَلَى الْفُلْكِ تُحْمَلُونَ. And on these animals and on boats you are transported. So you use these animals for a lot of benefits. The ingredients of it, you can use it. You milk these animals. You eat these animals. And subhanallah, at the same time, you use them as a ride. That these animals, you can use them as a ride also. And if anyone have lived in a farming area, you see that when we use the word ride, we are only thinking about one person riding on the back of a horse and enjoying his ride. But if really we look at what transportation means, you may not have seen trucks with the load that people load these cattle with. And they put 2 engines in front, 2 bulls in the front. And I have seen that with my own eyes, where it's, in our term, we just may say that it's a truckload. It's a truckload that is behind these 2 bulls that are pulling it, and they are, mashallah, this person doesn't need to fill no gas. He doesn't have to grease them. He doesn't have to, he's providing with food anyway. He has to feed them. He is feeding them anyway. And with that, he's getting, and what's the horsepower of it? You cannot imagine. You cannot imagine the horsepower of these bulls when they are pulling things. And really, a large portion of transportation in many countries, it's done through these animals. Up to this day, these animals are being used, because those people, they cannot use these tractors, they cannot afford to use them, they cannot afford to buy trucks, and they cannot afford to pay for all of these things. So, and they have, these animals are more economical for them, and they have better uses for them, and they can use it in the farm, they can use it for transportation, they can use it for food, they can use it for selling milk. They have a lot of uses from them. So this is what they like to use and they prefer to use. So, وَعَلَيْهَا وَعَلَى الْفُلْكِ تُحْمَلُونَ. As you are being transported on animals, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions one more thing is that we use as transportations, and those are the boats and the ships. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning things of ibrah, things of lesson that you get transported on boats also. And subhanAllah, even this transportation of the boat is something that if we start thinking about it, it's nothing but the qudra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That this water, that is so, it's liquid, it's so soft. You can put anything, you can put a small nail on the water and the nail will keep on sipping down and just will keep on going down all the way to the depth of it. And here there is a huge ship with so much weight. It's a whole town. And nowadays with airports and aeroplanes on it. And it's carrying the whole town. And what's carrying it? Just this water. Just imagine if the water will start moving out. What is stopping the water from moving out from under the ship? We see, it's the build of it and the chemicals, and this is nothing but Rabbul Alameen subhanahu wa ta'ala's qudra who built it that way. And subhanallah, we know it as when you put something that is heavy, that has weight in it, you put it on the water, it's going to be sinking down, it will go down. The water freezes in the middle of the ocean, not all the way on top, the freeze down there, and that ice, that freeze does not go down when it gets weight and becomes it becomes solid, becomes like a rock, becomes like a stone. It's supposed to go down. No, it doesn't go down. Where does it go? It comes up. If all of that ice will start going down, the animals at the depth of the ocean would die. All of the water will start freezing down there, and there are so many animals that live at the depth of it, and that all of that water will start freezing and they would die. It comes up because the surface of it is something where they may not need it that much. Animals can stay below that and they can go down and they find the water that is comfortable for them. We may call it chemicals, the way how chemicals develop in the freezing and after it would freeze, but it's nothing but it all shows the qudra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how He built the whole system of this universe. And really, water, you can look at it, that anything you put you put your finger, the water moves out. And you're putting a big ship and doesn't move out, it's carrying it. It's not that it doesn't have no room to go away. It's nothing but the qudra of Allah. وَعَلَيْهَا وَعَلَى الْفُلْكِ تُحْمَلُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning the things of ibrah for us, things that have a lot of lessons, things that remind us of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of the greatness of Allah, of the existence of Allah. And nowadays, as we don't see these ships too much, we see aeroplanes all the time. And same thing. What is carrying these aeroplanes? Water is carrying the ships. Air is carrying the aeroplanes. This air is so powerful, has so much power. SubhanAllah, with all the weight that is in the plane, 400, 500 people with their baggage, with so many things in it, and what's pushing it, what's lifting it, what's keeping it up there? Air. It's on the air, using the power of air, nothing else. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would change the direction of the wind, everything is gone. If the air is asked to stop and not to function the way it's functioning, everything is gone. Water was used to destroy the people of Nuh alayhi salatu wassalam. Air was used to destroy the people of Salih alayhi salatu wassalam. The whole nation was destroyed just by air. Here the whole nation was destroyed only by water. So we see these things, water and air, we can always, mashallah, we are using it, and these are powerful things. And there are so many lessons just in these simple things for us. وَعَلَيْهَا وَعَلَى الْفُلْكِ تُحْمَلُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you ponder into my ayahs, you would realize that you are being transported on these boats and on these animals, and there are great lessons for you in these things. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to understand the lessons of the qudra. This is a great ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we see the lesson in the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We see the lessons of the qudra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala everywhere. And everything would remind us of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By seeing everything, a person would turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that this is the creation of my Rabb subhanahu wa ta'ala. My Rabb created these things. And He is the one who put so much power in it. He is the one who put so much strength in these things. My Rabb subhanahu wa ta'ala, His qudra is behind everything. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put so much qudra, not in things that we normally consider very powerful, just in the air, He put so much qudra that this air is carrying our whole globe. Our whole globe that we live in, we are living in an aeroplane right now. This globe is not standing on pillars that are made by metal. No, this globe is only on the air. The whole globe is just standing on the earth. This is one aeroplane that we all are riding, and it's moving too. It's not just standing at the same place. It's turning around. And it's moving. And there are so many similar planes out there. The sun, moon, and all the stars and everything just standing in the air. Just imagine if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could put so much qudra in this air, how much qudra Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself has. The Qadir who can put this power into the air, how much qudra He Himself has. This is only to give us some understanding of the qudra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is only one thing, air. Everything else, just start looking at these things that have power in it, that we consider that they carry something, some importance, and they have some strength, and they have some power. They all are created by Allah. Allah who created so many powerful things. How powerful that Rabb subhanahu wa ta'ala must be. And this would just give us some clue of the qudra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And after all of this, we have to say that مَا عَرَفْنَاكَ حَقَّ مَعْرِفَتِكَ, we have not understood you the way we are supposed to understand you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We cannot even understand one of your attributes. And as we see that we cannot even understand the attributes of His qudra subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the right understanding of His ayahs, of His deen, and the tawfiq to benefit from His ayahs and from the lessons that He have kept for us in this world. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.